Welcome everyone to the River Murray Water Resources and Allocation update for the 15th of June 2020. My name's Jared Eaton from the Department for Environment and Water, and today I'll be providing you with an update on the current water resource conditions for the River Murray system and the Water Allocation Outlook. In the presentation today I'd like to talk about the following topics: an update on the River Murray system inflows and storages, the current water resource position and climate outlook, and then importantly information on water allocation and a number of key points to consider when looking at the forthcoming season. With the River Murray system inflows, what we've seen during May is a substantial improvement to the inflows. They were recorded at 810 gigalitres, which is well above the long-term average of 430 for May. So that was as a result of some quite substantial rainfall towards the end of April, which significantly improved the inflows during May. Now, the inflows for the 2019-20 water year were 3,810 gigalitres, and that compares to a median inflow of 7,320 gigalitres. This is the highest May inflow that we've seen since May 1989, and that just highlights how wet catchments are at this point in time, and the fact that we're currently seeing quite reasonable base flows continuing into the system. When we came to May, the rainfall was actually around, in certain areas in the Upper Murray catchment, below average to average. Notwithstanding that rainfall pattern that we observed in May, again the inflows were quite significant for May. So what this has meant for the River Murray system storages, so now we're looking at the history of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority storage volumes tracking from June 2000 until June 2020. So we've got 20 years worth of data shown here. The blue line is the long-term average active storage volume, and the black line is the actual storage volume tracking over time. So where the red circle is, that highlights what has happened over the last couple of months since the storages bottomed out several months ago. We've actually seen quite a significant improvement over the last 2 months with the inflows into storages. So again, it's really good news that the inflows are tracking in the right way. It's certainly a very different outlook compared to what we were seeing at the start of the 2019-20 water year. In terms of the volume of water sitting in storage at this point in time, the long-term average for the end of June is 5,730 gigalitres, or 62%. In mid-June last year, in 2019, there was 3,320 gigalitres, or 34% in storage. Now, again, over the last couple of months, because we've seen some quite reasonable improvements with the inflows into storages, we're currently now sitting at 3,790 gigalitres, or 41% capacity. So that's a 7% increase in the storage volume compared to the same time last year, again highlighting the improved inflow situation. Now, in terms of the rainfall outlook provided by the Bureau of Meteorology, so over on the left-hand side of the slide, this is the chance of exceeding median rainfall for the June to August period. You can see that there was a lot more blue last time when we presented the rainfall outlook to you. That has somewhat diminished over the last month, and now for the July to September period, the chance of exceeding median rainfall across the Upper Murray catchment area is roughly around a 60 to 70% chance of exceeding median rainfall. So it has slightly weakened, and that's mainly as a result of the cooling eastern Indian Ocean that is currently being observed, which has the potential to reduce winter rainfall, which is often derived from the northwest cloud band. So even though the outlook for improved rainfall has slightly diminished, we need to look at it from the perspective that we have quite wet catchments at the moment, and if we do see rainfall being in that range of 60 to 65% exceeding the median rainfall, we should get some quite reasonable inflows. So in terms of how water is shared, so South Australia receives a share of the inflows into both Dartmouth and Hume reservoirs, which also includes inflows from the Snowy Hydro Scheme, inflows from the Kiewa River, and the storage volume in Lake Victoria. We also receive a share of water which comes into Menindee Lakes, but only when Menindee Lakes storage volume exceeds 640 gigalitres. The current storage volume in Menindee Lakes is under 640 gigalitres, so further rainfall and inflows into the northern Murray-Darling Basin will be required before we can get a share of any inflows from Menindee Lakes. Now, as a general rule of thumb, New South Wales and Victoria own their tributary inflows. Now, these are highlighted in the slide in the green and the purple coloured text, so any inflows that come in from the Murrumbidgee River in green goes to New South Wales, and anything coming in from Victoria from rivers such as the Goulburn River and the Ovens, they tend to go to Victoria. At this current point in time, under the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement water sharing rules, South Australia continues to receive a 1/3 share of the Victorian tributary inflows into the River Murray system until the 1 of August, when we revert back to a normal 1/3 sharing of the inflows into the storages. And this is part of the reason why we've seen some quite substantial improvements to South Australia's water availability over the last month. Now, in terms of the current position we take in South Australia about planning for water allocations going forward, we do adopt a very conservative water allocation position based on the worst case scenario. Now, the worst case scenario is a scenario where conditions are extremely dry. We're certainly not seeing those very dry conditions at this point in time, and that worst case scenario is based on inflows. They're actually less than what was observed during the Millennium Drought. So it is a very, very conservative outlook under that worst case scenario. Now, when we're looking at the current inflow trends, we're certainly not seeing anywhere near the worst case inflows at this point in time. And in April, we've been advised by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority that we had a starting position of 696 gigalitres of water available to us. Since that time, we've seen further improvements with the rainfall and the inflows into storages, combined with the fact that we're getting a 1/3 share of tributary inflows from Victoria. Our position has now increased to a minimum starting position of 1,105 gigalitres. Quite a healthy improvement in the space of 2 months. Now, the improvement has been due to, as I said, the above average inflows and the current water sharing arrangements. So if we still have reasonable rainfall and inflows in June and July, there's quite good prospects for further improvements to South Australia's water availability in the coming months. So storage volumes have continued to improve since mid-May. The volume we've seen coming into the storage, excluding Menindee Lakes, is around 460 gigalitres now. That's quite a substantial improvement into the storages. Those recent improvements provided to South Australia, combined with the observed inflows, are well above that worst case inflow scenario. The worst case inflow scenario is 768 gigalitres for an entire 12-month period. We had 810 gigalitres as the inflow during May, so that highlights how conservative that worst case scenario is. Now, the wetting trend is positively affecting stream flows, with the base flows building to levels above what we've experienced over the last 3 years. So that trend of higher base flows coming into the River Murray system is continuing. This is the first time these catchments have experienced such wet conditions since 2016. So again, the good news continues. The main inflow period for the River Murray system is between June to November, and that's roughly where about 80% of the inflows occur during this time. So when you look at the rainfall outlook combined with the current status of catchments, we expect to receive some quite reasonable improvements to our water resource availability position over the coming months. So the outlook is still favourable in terms of the rainfall, so there is a very high chance that South Australia will continue to receive significant improvements to our water availability in the coming months. So in terms of thinking about water availability for the 2021 water year, irrigators are encouraged to take into account the probability scenarios for the potential improvements rather than just focusing solely on the predicted worst case scenarios. So we have, as I said before, we've seen the improvement now up to 1,105 gigalitres under that worst case scenario, which allows for allocations to improve to 40% allocation. And just reminding people, at 1,496 gigalitres, that's equivalent to 100% allocation. Now, it's important that people do take into account the current position of 40%, reasonable prospects of improvements going forward when they make decisions around water for private carryover for the coming water year. You can see that we've got several hundred gigalitres of improvement to go before we get to 100% allocation. In terms of the River Murray water allocation scenarios, so we've updated the scenarios now based on the latest advice from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and the projected allocations are shown here in the slide. So we're looking under a really dry or exceptionally dry type scenario. There's a 99% chance of allocations reaching 72% by 1 November. If you look at some of the still dry scenarios, but not as conservative as a 99% scenario, so let's say we pick a 90% scenario, what it's showing us here is there's the possibility of having 100% allocation by the 1st of November, so quite reasonable prospects of allocation coming on to a higher level earlier than what we observed last year. And this is the same information put in a graph format there. And as you can see, that under the majority of those scenarios, we end up on 100% allocation, with the exception of that extremely dry or 99% scenario. So in terms of where more information can be accessed, I've listed a number of websites here for South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. So I encourage you to visit these websites and have a look at the information which is provided on those websites. Thank you for listening today. I hope you found the information useful. If you do have any questions, I encourage you to contact the department and we'll assist you where we can. Thank you.